The learned helplessness epidemic, how society is training people to be powerless. If you're convinced you can't change your life, you won't even try. And that's exactly the point. Introduction: the cult of I can't. At this point, some people don't have a glass ceiling. They've got a glass floor and still refuse to stand up. It's like they've turned I can't into a lifestyle brand, complete with a sad logo and a loyalty program for despair. Ever met someone who has an excuse for everything? I can't get ahead because the system is rigged. I can't find a good relationship because all the good ones are taken. I can't change my situation because that's just how life works. They might not even sound bitter or angry. They just sound defeated. Like you just told them that avocados used to be called alligator pearls, confused, suspicious, and somehow personally offended. Or like you've interrupted their pity party with a PowerPoint on how to leave the house. And if you push back, for example, if you say, hey, you actually have more control than you think, they look at you like you don't get it. But here's the thing, they didn't always think like that. This mindset isn't natural, it's conditioned. It's called learned helplessness, a psychological trap where people stop trying to change their situation because they've been trained to believe it's impossible. And right now, it's everywhere. Society is engineering people to be powerless, not through force, but through subtle conditioning that keeps people dependent, disengaged, and convinced that nothing they do will ever matter. Let's break this down. The psychology of learned helplessness, how people stop fighting. The term learned helplessness comes from an experiment in the 1960s by psychologist Martin Seligman. Here's what he found. There were two groups of dogs, Group A and B. In Group A, dogs were put in a cage with an electric floor, but they could escape by jumping over a barrier. In Group B, different dogs were put in the same cage, but no matter what they did, they couldn't escape the shocks. Later, all the dogs were put in a cage where escape was possible. The shocking part, no pun intended, the dogs in Group B didn't even try to escape. They just laid down and accepted it, even though the barrier was low, even though they could have jumped, even though they weren't actually trapped anymore. Once they had learned that effort was useless, they stopped trying, even when they had a way out. Sound familiar? The person who stays in a dead-end job because it's all they can get. The person who stays in a toxic relationship because it's too hard to start over. The person who never tries something new because they're just not that kind of person. At some point, they stopped believing they had options. And once you stop believing you have options, you don't need a cage to keep you in one place. You'll do it all by yourself. You'll feng shui your own prison and call it cozy. How society conditions people to accept powerlessness. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to be powerless. They're trained into it, and the training starts early. School trains obedience, not critical thinking. The school system doesn't teach kids how to think. It teaches them how to comply. Students are rewarded for memorization, but punished for questioning authority. And yes, obviously there's a good way to question authority and a bad way to question authority, but that's not the point. People are trained to believe success equals following the rules, not questioning them. 2. Media trains victimhood as an identity. Modern media doesn't just show problems, it subtly conditions people to believe those problems are inescapable. The algorithm prioritizes content that triggers outrage and despair over content that fosters self-agency. The result? People feel informed, but powerless. Aware, but stuck. It's like an infomercial for despair. But wait, there's more. If you call now, we'll throw in a bonus existential crisis, absolutely free. Order in the next 10 minutes and we'll upgrade your doom scrolling to premium hopelessness. 3. The system rewards dependence, not self-reliance. People are punished for independence, financial penalties for making too much to qualify for aid, reliance on debt, etc. The government, corporations, and institutions benefit from a population that believes it needs saving. If you think you can't change your life, you'll spend more time waiting for someone else to fix it. breaking free, the mental exercises that restore self-agency. Here's the good news. Learned helplessness is not permanent. It's reversible. The trick? You have to retrain your brain to recognize control again. 1. The micro-wins strategy. Your brain needs proof that effort leads to results. So start with tiny, winnable challenges that rewire your sense of agency. For example, instead of saying, "I'm stuck in this job," focus on applying to one job per day. The key isn't the size of the win, it's proving to your brain that small actions equal real change. Think of it like teaching your inner quitter that the light switch isn't just decorative. 2. The what if I'm wrong test. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. I mean, toddlers believe peekaboo makes them invisible, and we let them vote in the form of juice box selection. Meanwhile, you're over here swearing the cage is steel when it's just a pop-up tent. One of the biggest traps of learned helplessness is assuming your beliefs are facts. So challenge yourself. Ask yourself, what if I'm wrong about being powerless? What if I have more control than I think? What's one thing I haven't tried yet? 3. The action before emotion rule. People think they need to feel motivated before taking action. And believe me, I've fallen into this trap myself quite a bit. The truth? Action creates motivation, not the other way around. If you wait to feel ready, you'll never move. Instead, move first and let the motivation catch up. 4. The 3-year thought experiment. Imagine yourself 3 years from now stuck in the same place, the exact same place. No progress, no change, no growth. Does that thought bother you? Good. It's your soul's SOS, not an RSVP to the stagnation gala. So if you do feel that way, if it does bother you, that's your proof that you don't actually want to stay where you are. Now ask, what can I do today to prevent that from happening? Final takeaway. You're not stuck. You've been trained to think you are. Most people aren't powerless. They just believe they are because they've been taught that effort is pointless, exhausting, or won't make a difference. And yes, those are real experiences and can't be discounted. But that's a lie. The only way out of learned helplessness is to start taking small, deliberate actions right now. Because if you don't, in 3 years, you'll be sitting in the exact same spot, wondering why nothing ever changed. And that's not fate. That's a choice. Closing thoughts. Look, you're not trapped. You're just standing in an open cage waiting for someone to carry you out. So here's the question. What's one action you can take today to prove to yourself that you're still in control?